So, ladies and gentlemen, our $1 million question on Mother's Day weekend. Would you risk your life to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Well, that's a serious question. This player did just that, and I'm not joking. He did put his life at risk by defecting from his native Slovakia or Czechoslovakia to come to North America. Eventually drafted as an overage skater in the 1982 entry draft. He was 25 years old when Toronto took him 25th overall in the second round. A very, very talented player in the Czechoslovakian Premier League for Prague Sparta. Eventually won a silver medal at the Worlds, a bronze medal at the World Juniors. But at that World Championship is when the worm turned for Peter Ihnacak. Now, Peter Ihnacak, born May 3rd, 1957, in Poprad, Czechoslovakia, which is now obviously Poprad, Slovakia. First came with major prominence with Žilava of the Czech junior system, and he played for 2 years after that. Moved to Prague Sparta in 1980, 47 points in 44 games. 45 points in 44 games in 81. In 82, his draft year, 38 points in 39 games. Now, he defected from Czechoslovakia during the 1982 World Championship Tournament in Helsinki, making him a strong prospect for the 82 draft despite his advanced age. His brother helped him defect. He went to Stockholm and all the way to North America via New York. The NHL ruled he would have to enter the league through the draft rather than be free to sign with any team, as had been the case with Peter Stastny. Now, Toronto was looking at taking him, so was the Nordiques, but eventually Toronto took him. Now, he debuted on October 6, 1982, and had a great opening campaign with the Leafs. Set a points record that wasn't broken until Austin Matthews in 2017. First season with Toronto, 66 points in 80 games. Now, Austin Matthews again scored more goals, but that year Ihnacak had 38 big assists in those 80 contests. 84 in injury plague year, he had 23 points in 47 games, but 85 he got back to the 22 goal mark, added 22 assists in 70 contests. 86 and 87, 18 to 12 goals, but his career started to fade a little bit. He was also spending time in Newmarket. Eventually went back to Europe in the German league with EC Hudus München in 91 and EHC Freiburg. 92 also played with HC Ajowi of the NDA, which he also played in 93. Back to Germany for Krefelder EV 1981. Then with Krefeld Prigno of the DEL in 96 and 97. So full Czechoslovakian totals, 154 points in 177 games, including 83 goals. NHL totals, 102 goals, 267 assists for 417 points, and 14 points in 28 games. Now at the World's European Junior Championships in 76, World Juniors in 77, and again the silver at the World Championships in 82, no points in 4 games. Now, Ihnacak's younger brother, Miroslav Ihnacak, was selected by the Leafs in the 82 entry draft as well. Now, after the elder Ihnacak defected, Miroslav was forbidden to play international tournaments for fears he might defect as well. This didn't stop him, and he joined his brother and the Maple Leafs in December of 85. Miroslav would eventually play parts of 2 seasons with the Maple Leafs and 1 game with the Red Wings before returning to Europe and finishing his career in Slovakia in 2006. Now, Peter as well has been a coach. He's spent time as the head coach of Nuremberg Ice Tigers, very good team, and also has been a European-based scout for the Washington Capitals, because Washington has relied on a lot of Europeans over the last number of years. Now, again, he had an assist in his first NHL game, and the big thing, of course, the late Miroslav Fricher, and him and Rob played on that big line in 83 and 84. Now, again, he tied the Toronto record since broken for goals by a rookie in 28 and 83. Now, the 83 playoffs were a non-starter for him because he really cut his calf, an injury suffered during a late season game against Buffalo. Now, he damaged his knee in 84, will put him out for most of the year, and also had a bad shoulder injury. Now, again, he missed part of the 85 season with a knee injury, and also missed part of 86 with a concussion, which really plagued him, and a shoulder injury of January of 86. Now, he rebounded to be named NHL Player of the Week on February 8, 1987. Now, he was named Nuremberg's head coach prior to the 98 season and held that position up until 2000. He was also Hanover's head coach prior to the 2002 season and remained there until November 2001. Now, he lived with his older brother in New Jersey during the summer of 82 as he waited for Toronto's training camp to start. Did not play his first minor league games until 87 when he was demoted by Toronto Newmarket as part of a skill development exercise. Now, he lived in Toronto year-round during his NHL playing days and continued to maintain primary residence there after leaving the NHL, and was a big force in Toronto amongst his native Slovakian and Czechoslovakian community. Again, he's the older brother of Miroslav, and were the first pair of European brothers and the first pair of non-twin European brothers drafted in the NHL in the same year. And he's also a father of a great hockey prospect, Brian Ihnacak. So a very, very interesting path to the NHL. And like I said, the Czechoslovakians were scared. Now, he was also supposed to play the 1980 Winter Olympics. And if you watch Czechoslovakia, they were kind of lacking in that tournament, especially against the major teams. There was a reason why, because Ihnacak was a big part of that first and second line in the power play unit. But because he was considered a flight risk, he wasn't sent over. Now, but he became so talented he could not use him. And Ihnacak's coach pushed for his inclusion on the 82 team in Helsinki, and of course that's when he fled. But for anybody listening to this podcast that's under the age of 30, there was a time, ladies and gentlemen, that the communist bloc was holding back Eastern European players from North America, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Ukraine, all these players. And there was an influx of these players. By the time the Stasies arrived in Ihnacak, he paved the road for a lot of Europeans to come over. But I think the last ones to really break down the barrier were the Buries. I could be wrong, but like I said, don't quote me on that. But I think there was about 20 or 30 defections throughout the years, and usually the best players would defect. But there was no situation. Now the Russians, I know many Russians have been drafted, including Ihnacak, but he never came to Canadian teams until the U.S. teams opened up, like Detroit. I think for some reason it was easier for the Russians to defect to American teams than it was, because to my knowledge, there was no defectors with the Montreal Canadiens, obviously the Stasies in Quebec, but I think what really appealed to the Ihnacaks was Toronto was a cosmopolitan city, easy to get in and out relation, and at the time most of the Canadian and provincial governments were positive towards people giving up the Eastern Bloc and coming to Canada and seeking a living here. Sort of like what they call a safe haven in a storm. So again, Peter Ihnacak, very talented guy, really enjoyed his play, a very, very, he wasn't an egotistical player. I've seen him have an open net on a 2-on-1 and pass it. There's various YouTubes of him and the Podubny and Feature line. My God, the when around or hitting the belt, or getting upwards of 3 to 5 points a game. And Podubny, very underrated. Feature, very, very underrated. But Ihnacak was sort of, not to diminish his skills, but he would, 6 feet, 190. You wouldn't expect a player like that to take many penalties, and he most of the seasons with the Leafs, he was a very, very positive influence. And I think him being around that 86 and 87 playoff run, he was a big part of that. There was a time, ladies and gentlemen, where Toronto would win a first round series it was almost guaranteed. And him and Podubny and Freacher and everybody else were the cause of that. All the young players as well in Toronto. So this is the latest in our Toronto Maple Leafs podcast, our vintage one. If you like what we're doing, give us a like, comment, or subscribe. And for anybody that didn't know about the European influence of the Czechoslovakians on Toronto, and Stashny came to them later on, Marion. Check it out. It's quite interesting. A book should be written about that, about the 1980s Leafs with the European influence. I'd definitely read it. Maybe Jim Proudfoot could have wrote it, but I don't know. I don't know exactly who would have the expertise to write that. I'll leave the listeners pass that message on to one writer you can think might be appropriate. Thanks for listening. Bye.